everybody saw the Will Smith eating spaghetti video, and we've gone from Will Smith eating spaghetti looking kind of crazy to now, I can scroll on social media and see a cheetah that looks like it's legitimately juggling.
I've had conversations, things are mixed, teachers don't necessarily they're nervous about using AI because they don't want students to cheat.
So many people have this negative connotation like, oh man, AI is just awful. It's going to make dumb people. No, it's going to make intelligent people look even more intelligent because they know how to use the tools.
We don't just want to say, hey, here's some technology, now use it. We've got to make sure that our user community has the tools that they need.
They've learned how to get around the firewall. That is so incredible. These students are this smart. Let's teach them AI. They could be the future leaders in this whole country, This is Jay and Michael here on the IT Directors Podcast.
Yes, sir.
Look, I'm so pumped about today. We have a super guest for our viewers and our listeners. Personal friend of mine, also ex-colleague, and just an altogether rock star. So we have Brittni Tucker from Birmingham City Schools, IT Director. Brittni, how's it going today?
I'm well, Jay. Thank you. What about you guys?
We are great. So
doing well.
Look, I've been excited about this episode, Brittni, because your personality, your education, your charisma, everything you brought in Birmingham City Schools. But, just for our listeners and viewers, we worked together and I've retired and moved on. Now I'm at Clearwinds and Brittni is just killing it at Birmingham City Schools. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself, of kind of, your role there, what you're doing, and kind of a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I was heartbroken when Jay left. Still kind of am. But I digress. I've been in technology, I guess, since 2019. All of my experience prior to now was in higher ed. So this is my first K through 12 bout. So it's a learning experience. I have an undergrad in English, a master's from Troy, go Trojans. I should have also said go Blazers.
Hey, Blaze on, baby. There we go.
From Troy in government contracting. So policy and communication are always forefront for me. And just growing up, I guess, as a millennial and having all those advances and really avenues and pathways for technology and just mixing all of those things together. So yeah, that's just a little bit.
Oh yeah. Hey, I got to say millennials unite. So there we go.
Hey, look, I love it. I'll never forget our first staff meeting as directors in our old role. And Brittni was like, hey, y'all, look, I'm an English major, so I document and I'm going to write. And so you're going to get tired of my emails, my documentation, but you do a great job at that.
Awesome.
And I think in IT, and we'll talk about this, we'll get into the AI, what our episode's about. But in IT, I think documentation is lacking, right?
Yes.
And it was refreshing for me because she's super detailed, that's not always the case, of IT directors. So that kind of gets us into the role of an IT director and kind of what you're doing at Birmingham Schools. But you've been tasked with rolling out AI district-wide where we didn't have any AI,
Right.
And in today's world, the question is, should we use AI? Should we not use AI for students and staff and education? So tell us a little bit about kind of just what you're doing in that realm right now. Like, what are you doing in Birmingham City Schools around AI, like policy and governance, and kind of how you're implementing that?
Sure. I think what's most important to note first is kind of developing your committee. So that was my first thing. Working in higher ed, and as you can imagine, working with faculty, you've got a slew of educators all on different spectrums. Some with, just master's degrees, some that have gone further to conduct research and are able to kind of give you a good, I would say, input in terms of what it looks like to kind of organize a project or organize an initiative. So working at Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, working at Miles here in Birmingham, I was able to really get a background when it came to if we want to disseminate any form of technology, whether devices, applications, software, whatever, you've kind of got to have a planned rollout, right? We don't just want to say, hey, here's some technology, now use it. We've got to make sure that our user community has the tools that they need. So I knew going into this, I can have a plan. This is what I want to do. We've got to have a policy. We've got to, identify some technology to implement. Yes, that's a given. Excuse me. But what does it look like on the back end? Because once I get it out there, I still have to have the support from my colleagues, other directors, other officers, to make sure that their respective areas are able to kind of contribute to what we need to make sure that this is good for everyone. So I tell everyone that will listen, of course, do your research, see what's happening nationwide. I even, other countries, just to see what they are gauging and how they are kind of gauging the success rate of what they're implementing, but making sure that we have that governance committee. So it's not just people at the district level. We've got teachers, we've got other partners, other vendors, companies in Birmingham, outside of Birmingham, but just making sure that those that, have been doing this, longer than we have, are brought to the table. And we're not really eliminating anyone, because for me, it's not trying to limit what we're kind of putting out there, but it's just making sure that we're doing it responsibly, because we're all being touched by AI, right?
Yeah. I kind of got a bigger question that's kind of like even might be a step back a little bit, but big picture. Everybody saw the Will Smith eating spaghetti video, and we've gone from Will Smith eating spaghetti looking kind of crazy to now I can scroll on social media and see a cheetah that looks like it's legitimately juggling, and I'm fascinated by that. I love animal videos. But in this whole journey of AI as it's progressed, from your perspective, how do you and how did you take that step back to when did we first start seeing, hey, the benefits and the use cases that this could have in that? This field of K-12, the journey of it. How do you go about the process? And I guess when did it first start making sense? So hey, yeah, these Will Smith spaghetti videos from a few years ago, no, that's actually going to be a tool that's useful and beneficial.
Sure. For me, it started with programming. I tell people all the time, you've been doing this. We've used, Google Maps for a while now. It's just that the term, I guess, AI is so lucrative, and we see that everywhere. But as a database administrator, doing automations, programming, making sure that I have an institution and students that need certain things, that those things are able to happen without necessarily human interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, jumping into technology, that's where I started, with applications and databases. And so to just see everything evolve, I tell people all the time, the AI component is really just programming. You're able to set those automations, but then have a little bit of, I won't say a little bit, a lot more computer recognition, and more intelligence, so that I may say, okay, well, in my experience, I have a certain level of experience. I know that in certain situations I need to do X, Y, and Z in order to be proactive or reactive in a certain situation. But now I can rely on a computer to say, okay, well, Brittni, you may have missed X, Y, and Z step, but I've been able to think of ahead for you to enact that. So I think that for me in education, and admittingly starting in admissions, I didn't start in technology. I got my start in
same here, higher ed and on the recruitment side. So same here.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was showing students how to use technology to accomplish their goal that really got me intrigued. Mm-hmm. So once I kind of got that step, I moved into really working with applications, and seeing the transition from that until now. And like you mentioned, those videos, my main thing is, I can think back when I was a student. Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I came to Birmingham to go to UAB to do pre-med, and I finished with an English degree.
Uh-huh.
So it was realizing my strengths and weaknesses, but I'm 17,
Yeah.
I don't really know what I want to do. And so for me, it's more than just making sure that our students have that digital literacy and are able to identify things that are AI, and have been influenced by AI, but then also giving them an opportunity to really utilize that and say, okay, well, maybe I want to develop a business. Maybe I don't know how to code, but I can use AI to, generate a website, and maybe automate some things for me if it's just, me working as an entrepreneur by myself. So taking that thought process and not only marrying, curriculum standards and state standards to what they already need to be prepared to do once they graduate and making an AI ready student. It's also showing them that they can be entrepreneurs and do things beyond graduation that don't necessarily always result in going to college.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So, Brittni, you talked a lot about some of the policies and your enforcement and some of the things you've done, right? And so, so for all of our listeners and viewers, Brittni she's ground level. She's started the AI data governance policy at Birmingham City Schools, right? We didn't have one. And so she's founded the committee that she talked about and getting the right personnel on there, the stakeholders and the buy-in. So, you talked about that. What challenges have you seen, Brittni, with taking it from you have the committees, you have the stakeholders, you have the policy now. So what challenges have you seen about, okay, what is acceptable for use? What is not acceptable? What is, do we let them use Gemini? Do we let them use ChatGPT? Do we let them use Copilot? I know Birmingham, we're, Office 365 and Copilot and you're rolling it out. So how have you dealt with like what is acceptable and like putting it in practicality for our staff and our students?
Sure. I'm telling my team all the time that it's different in K through 12 because you do have a certain focus on educational technology. In higher ed, there's no distinction between IT and educational technology. I might spend the first half of my day in the IT shop, maybe working on devices, doing certain things, and the latter half of my day is going into a classroom, going into a lab, showing faculty or students how to use certain technology. Whereas in K through 12, I have a designated team for educational technology. I have a designated team that does networking, infrastructure, X, Y, and Z. So that's the distinction. And so making sure that it's not just that my IT team is supporting my users, the educational technology team makes sure that they are supporting our teachers. It's not just necessarily making sure that the students have what they need. Of course, that's a priority for us. But my first step is professional development and making sure that my teachers have what they need so that they can deliver. But then also I think it's scaling. I talk about equity all the time when you think about technology. In our school district, it's not just, we are one-to-one, meaning that every student typically does have a device. But it's not just about that. I want to make sure that, yes, they have the device and know how to use it. But in a lot of cases for us, that student is bringing home a technology that is utilized, if I'm being honest, by the entire family.
Yeah.
It doesn't just stop with the student. Mom might be using it, auntie, grandma, whomever. And so that student is a catalyst. They're at home saying, well, I know how to do, X, Y, and Z. And then grandma knows now, okay, well, I can use a banking app.
Yeah.
And then she's able to do what she needs to do in money management and not just every time decide, I've got to go to the bank. My grandchild was able to show me, blah, 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 because this is what they learn. So it's scaling that. In higher ed, I might just have an institution. You might have undergrad programs and graduate programs and support, each of those groups. But in K through 12, where I've got almost 50 schools in a district, and each school, I tell my students not my students, I'm sorry, my team all the time. For me, it's like at the district level, we're like the federal government, right? We can kind of say,
yes,
this is what you should be doing, and kind of put some parameters in place. But at the schools, they're kind of like state governments.
No, that's a great analogy.
And the principals kind of dictate, kind of what they see best because they know their teachers, they know their administration, and they know their students. Whereas in higher ed, I can kind of say, okay, well, as a policy, nobody's using USB drives.
Yeah.
You know, you put it into the device, it's going to reject it. But I can't really set those standards. And even, you know, I've worked at Southern Research. So even working in that space where, you know, we're getting 1 trillion attacks a day. And so we have to be mindful of those things. This is a little different because I have to kind of have more empathy towards each situation. I can't just set a standard for the entire district. So when we think about acceptable use, you know, yes, I can say, okay, well, every student will get this type of device. If they're K through 8, they'll get this. 9 through 12 will get this. We'll have these applications and things of that nature. But at the same time, you know, different schools kind of dictate what they want to use. And so that also I have to be in the mindset of making sure my team can support whatever they are needing.
No, that is so great, Mike. I want to touch on something Brittni mentioned because a lot of our listeners and viewers, they don't know this about K-12. So Birmingham Schools is a very large school district, probably one of the top 3 or 4 in the state of Alabama. So they operate and function way differently than a small school district that has like 2 schools, right?
Right.
And so you mentioned about, like at the central office, like the federal government. So we put stuff in place. Hey, you know, here's what is acceptable for our AR policies. But each school is ran like a state, and the principal of that is the governor of that state.
Right.
And so I thought it was very interesting, Brittni's approach about how you're just giving them guidelines around AI, and you're giving them, you know, adoptable use stuff around AI. And hey, this is what we found. This is what we like. But every principal kind of does a little differently per students because their schools, their demographics are different, their cultures are different, their communities are different in those areas. So I think that's really awesome because I think in leadership sometimes, you know, especially in K-12, we can just blanket it.
Right.
And that's not always the best. And I think that's what's so unique what Brittni's done, Michael, is how you take it and you realize we got to give them some guidelines, but we're giving them some flexibility because at the end of the day, that's what you need. You know, in a corporation, you might can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But in local K-12, it is not the case, you know.
As it trickles down, how do the teachers adapt the policies and in regards to AI, are they nervous about it? Like, how are they reacting?
I think so. What we try to do, so there's a fine line between technology and curriculum, right? So I try to stay in my lane, but whatever curriculum may need, you know, of course we support. I tell my team all the time, I think in some cases, especially with technology, you can get into the space of trying to dictate to your users, like Jay just mentioned, this is what we're going to do. And so I try to tell them, you know, we aren't in that space. For us, it's let them tell us what they want to do or what they need. We are going to see if we can handle it, if we can do it. And then if not, you know, we'll move forward in that respect. But to answer your question, it's really been phenomenal. You know, I have a lot of teachers. So how we're set up, which I love the fact that I have educational technology coordinator and a coach at every school, in addition to a librarian. So that's about 3 people that aside of the school may have a technology teacher or a computer science teacher, but I have 3 designated people that teachers, administration can go to and say, you know, hey, I'm having the printer won't print, or I have this idea that I want to do with drones, you know, help me enact this. And so those people typically will inform my team or myself, and then we kind of get together to determine how we can support that. So we move in a way that it's not, okay, these are your options and pick one. You know, we let them kind of say, this is what I'm trying to do, and move along with local groups and organizations like Ed Farm, who support us tremendously, that will say, okay, well, we can designate these folks to this particular project at this particular school, and kind of help you all map out, you know, the project management for that. Because I only have 3 specialists for educational technology and over, you know, 45 schools, as you can imagine. That's a lot for them. And so having those partners is beneficial. But I think essentially right now, they kind of tell me, I've been using this because they go to conferences, they see and interact with different vendors, bring different things to me, different things back to the district. And if it's not something that I can do on a district level, the principals will say, hey, let's do this for my school. Just help us put it together, and we'll pay for it. We'll do, X, Y, and Z. So I think, I've had conversations, things are mixed. Teachers don't necessarily want to, they're nervous about using AI because they don't want students to cheat, right? I think that's a national concern, international. But, I hit it back to them. Okay, I understand that. But at the same time, what about using it as a resource? Show them how to use it, how to maybe check their work. And not every chat or LLM or chatbot that you use is of the mindset that it has to prompt and give a response. Some of them will continue to prompt and allow the student to kind of make their own assertions and say, hey, is this right? Should I be moving this way? Kind of more guided instructions. So we just try to work together to make sure that, we do our research and can provide what they need.
And that even hits at another thing. You've heard there's been a lot of conversation on how do we use it as a tool and not something that reduces critical thinking ability.
Right.
Like how do we use it in a way that it can benefit us but not substitute that that critical thinking.
Yeah, and look, and so for everyone that knows me, I'm very pro AI because I like using it for the tool set. I like it for the productivity part of it,
Right.
Brittni. And I love the fact that you are not putting constraints around our staff and the teachers and students around AI, right? You're enabling them. Like Michael said, the critical thinking piece. I think on a novice level, so many people have this negative connotation, like, oh man, AI is just awful. It's going to make dumb people. No, it's going to make smarter people even more smart, right? It's going to make intelligent people look even more intelligent because they know how to use the tools. And so I think what you're doing at Birmingham is such a roadmap for all of our listeners and viewers in all these other school districts that they don't have any policy around that. Right. So you're creating a student base that's more AI driven, and they're going to go out in the workforce and they're going to learn how to use these tools. And I remember last spring. So Brittni and I was downtown, last spring at Sloss Tech. For our listener viewers, shout out to Sloss Tech, hashtag Sloss Tech, free plug-in for Sloss Tech. But anyway, Sloss Tech is a huge technology conference here in Birmingham, Alabama. But they remember the whole AI deal. Yep. And you and I went to the AI Birmingham session. And I remember you were just starting, like, Jay, I got to start this AI here at Birmingham Schools. This is my initiative, and superintendent, blah, blah. And you were just starting. And now look where you are now, right? And we're using AI and emails and tools, and your students are rolling it out. Right. That's so exciting for me to see because that was just last spring. And now you have a committee. Now you have a policy. Now we have some guidelines, and I think for our listeners, viewers, they need to reach out and get your roadmap and how you accomplish that because it's not easy. I mean? And education moves slowly, and so it's not easy to implement these things. Right. But I think when we approach it, Michael, like a tool set, that's where we see how you can really become super successful in these AI tools. We've been using it for years.
Yeah,
right.
Alexa. What do people think that is? Or, Google, and I hear teachers like, I don't want my kids to cheat. Well, they can use Google the same way. You can upload an image into Google and it'll tell you what it is.
And they do.
Yeah. And so yesterday I was at a meeting at school. These students have learned how to get around the firewall, Brittni. Out of school, I'm not going to mention the school we were at, but we were meeting with a customer. They've learned how to get around the firewall because they realized if you keep crashing the search engine with too many searches, it crashes it. And for that split second, why it crashes the firewall, because it can't, filter so much, they'll put in, opens up another window and they can put in and go play Fortnite and they can do whatever. It opens up like a window. And I'm like, that is so incredible. These students are this smart. Let's teach them AI. They could be the future leaders in this whole country, And so I think you're doing that, which is great. And so I commend you. What, as we close and we wrap up, what is one thing that you would like to tell other like leaders in education, leaders in business, around, implementing an AI policy, just just, what is one thing that you would like to share? Like, hey, here, here's how we got started, or here was our approach. What do you think about that?
I think for me, it's just being open minded, right? Especially, I would say across any type of industry, but in education, that's most important because I have a bunch of colleagues that are across all different backgrounds, and they aren't dummies, right? These people are working in their field. They are continually doing the research that they need to do to develop their own departments. So, I couldn't just go into it bullheaded and say, well, I know best. I've got this experience. I've done, X, Y, and Z. There are times where you have to say, okay, and even with my team, hey, Ms. Tucker, I don't know if that's the best because, I'm new to this district, right? They've been here. And so while I don't necessarily want to perpetuate the past in some cases, I do want to make sure that we consider everything that has happened, and the learning styles, the adoptive styles of my users, because I can push out ideas all day, but if they're not going to be receptive, if it's a culture where, it's going to be, I may need to take other steps to make sure that we adopt it the certain way, then I'm going to have to do that. I can't just say, this is my way, and we're going to do it. So for me, I think it's, of course, doing my own research is what I did, my own experience. But then I think largely it was not even necessarily bringing external resources in, but listening to the folks that I work with daily, because they may not necessarily know all the technical pieces of AI, and that's given, but they know what it's going to take to make sure we become the top district. And I tell them all the time, we are going to be the top district.
Yeah.
We are on our way. So I would say, and creating the governance committee was something that spoke to that. You're going to have superintendents, presidents, CEOs, whomever that are going to have their own initiatives. It's my job to make sure that we meet that, but then also make sure that we do it in a secure way, in a way that's going to not cause us to keep repeating certain actions because it wasn't adopted in a way that we expected. So I think just having an open mindset and making sure that you include everyone. We in transportation, it doesn't matter. I want to make sure that we hear from everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that's key.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Michael, you have anything to add before we close here?
No, hey, I appreciate you. And there's several nuggets I'd love to even go in further. We can do that at a later time.
Yeah.
But I can say, man, I appreciate and I hear your intentionality on supporting your team and supporting both aspects. Because coming from higher ed, I know the differences between your administration, your staff, your faculty, and I know the lines you have to walk and buy-in you have to get. And so I can hear in that how you are attempting to champion both sides, what their goals are than yours as well. So I think you're doing a great job.
And look, for those that haven't worked, Michael's worked in higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
He's serving K-12 now. I've worked in K-12. We're serving you guys now. You're in K-12. It is a very navigational beacon you have to do, to have success.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And so we're excited just to promote that and promote what Birmingham School students are doing around AI, the teachers and staff. I'm excited because we want to partner with you guys. We want to kind of see this AI thing grow. And so it's just fun for me because I remember being at the first meeting when you were like, Jay, the superintendent said, I got to do this AI thing. Right. And now look at you, right? And so awesome. I'm very excited for you. So as we close today, look, go follow us on all of our platforms, the IT Directors Podcast. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Instagram. Go check us out. Follow Clearwinds. And we're going to have Brittni's information in the show notes so you can reach out to her directly. and she can provide some help and guidance around, that. So she didn't know that, but we're just offering that up to everyone. So look, and we thank you guys, and this is Clear Winds, and we are out. Hey, thanks for joining us today on the IT Directors Podcast. We're so glad you joined us. Look, go follow us on all social media platforms. The IT Directors Podcast, powered by Clear Winds. And look, if you want more information, check out our website, clearwinds.net. We're going to have show notes, special guest bios. We're going to have reels. Our marketing team has done a fantastic job. Go check this out. We're so thankful that you joined us today.